And hello, we're back with another episode of the Practice Forward podcast. I'm your host, Owen Bush. Today we are joined by Jeremiah Russell from Rogue Architecture. Thanks for joining us, Jeremiah. How you doing?
Absolutely, I'm doing great. Thanks, Owen. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. And you're joining us from Little Rock, Arkansas. Is that correct?
Yep.
Wow. So I don't know much about Little Rock. Is it? Would you say there's some kind of architectural signature to Little Rock? What's the?
Yeah, there's a couple. So Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas is famously the home of Fay Jones, who designed a series of chapels, the most famous of which being Thorn Crown, near Eureka Springs in the northwest corner of Arkansas. There's a couple of others. He also designed a number of homes. The School of Architecture at the University of Arkansas is named after him.
Okay.
He was a professor there for a number of years. He was also a student of Frank Lloyd Wright.
What period was that? So that's modernism, eh?
Yes. So he took a lot of cues from Frank Lloyd Wright, kind of, a modern spin on the prairie style of architecture that FLW was so famous for.
Yeah.
But really left his mark on the state of Arkansas.
Right. Well, so anyway, Jeremy, hope your week's been going well. And hope you've even had a chance to maybe get outside and in between your deadlines. Very nice here. I'm in Troy, New York. It's gorgeous. We're having a lovely Adirondack summer here. And so we're here on Practice Forward. This show is about how architects evolve their practice across reuse, sustainability, digital workflows, and cultural legacy, of which I think Jeremiah could talk to us about all those things. Jeremiah is the founder of Rogue Architecture. It's a practice built on people-first ethos and a fearless challenge accepted mindset. From reshaping a mid-century remodel at Lakeview to proposing an off-grid lead home in the Caymans to scaling intimacy in affordable housing, Jeremiah's work bridges craft, content, and community. Licensed across 14 states and active on Little Rock's planning boards, he navigates code, culture, and constraints, pointing us toward how decisions, sustainability, and modeling reshape practice today. Jeremiah, welcome to Practice Forward.
Thanks. That was a pretty good intro. You might actually have to send that to me. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. No worries. So yeah, I look forward to coming out and exploring Little Rock. I mean, I noticed on your website that you had a blog entry about, why is this building still vacant, or why are they thinking about tearing down this incredible historic building, right? And you were saying, sometimes maybe architects just need to get a little more involved in these things and not just wait for people to knock on their door about these things, because I definitely feel that way in my community here. There's a lot of buildings that I've even just gone and offered to scan them because I want to preserve them, and there doesn't seem like there's any kind of momentum. And then I always find that, like, sometimes that's all it takes to get the snowball rolling, because a lot of times people they don't know folks like you and I. They don't even know who to talk to or where to begin or how to even think about breaking down the problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair assessment. So, historic preservation is it's an interesting niche, and it's interesting because most people, a lot of times they appreciate historic preservation without even understanding consciously that they're appreciating historic buildings. And it's usually only until they're threatened, a building that's been there forever, is being threatened with demolition, and then that's when sort of the average public is suddenly woken up to the idea and like, oh, well, wait, why are they tearing this tearing down this perfectly good building that's been there forever, and that, you know, we've loved and enjoyed our entire lives.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, architects can take, and I think should take, a more proactive approach to preservation in terms of development. So, you know, identify those buildings, identify a use. I mean, hell, maybe even identify a potential tenant, and then, you know, put that plan together and seek out developers and investors that can help make it happen. And, you know, a lot of times also projects like that are the most successful when they have public buy-in. So, you know, approach your city board of directors, or your city managers, your mayor, whoever, and say, hey, you know, I've got an idea for this building. What can you do to help?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's an example. Here's an idea. For example, maybe this is something that might work in your community. Was we did a adaptive reuse studio with the School of Architecture here at Rensselaer, where we provided them with the point cloud and the model of the building. This is a building that was about to collapse. And they were looking at demolishing it. It would cost $2 million to do the demo, you know. They were like, so we scanned and modeled it, and then we did an adaptive reuse studio at Rensselaer, where there were all these different student design teams, and they all came up with completely different proposals for the adaptive reuse of the building. But then we were able to bring in the actual structural engineer and the actual GC and all the people that were actually working on the space. They were able to come into the critiques and say, oh, that's totally not buildable. That's not going to work. It's, you know, and point that that's not up to code, et cetera. So they could point out all those things. So the students could actually learn about all that stuff, in addition to, you know, learning how to do, like, you know, actually feasible designs. So, but anyway, that process brought a huge amount of attention to the building, and you know, and then that brought a huge amount of goodwill and interest and excitement about the project. You know?
Yeah. I mean, colleges and universities can be a great catalyst for that kind of work. It's funny you mentioned that. My grandfather actually went to RPI.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I'm
a long time ago.
Was he an
chemical engineering engineer. He was a chemical engineer, worked for GE for, I don't know, 40 years or something.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of those out here.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's just, you know, since you mentioned your family, I mean, let's talk about you know, what was it in your childhood, or, you know, growing up with your family, or a teacher or place that you were in that kind of made you really think about being an architect?
So it wasn't anybody. There are no architects in my family. I'm the only one. But what really influenced me was when I was a child. My grandmother took me and my mother shopping, and I don't remember where we were, but I do remember we were in a taxi heading down a main drag, and my grandmother and my mother kept yelling at me because I kept sticking my head out the window so that I could look up at all the tall buildings.
Yeah.
And so, you know, just from a very early age, you know, I grew up an artist. You know, I would draw, I would paint. You know, my mother was a wonderful artist. She would do watercolors and wood burning, and so, you know, art was something that was always in the house. It was always an activity that we were doing. But I was also really interested in sort of how things were put together, and so, you know, that was kind of the early impetus. And then, you know, when I was in high school, I took a drafting class, really excelled at it. You know, the more sort of technical aspect of architecture, and then, you know, went to the Savannah College of Art and Design, spent 6 amazing years living in Savannah, 5 years, you know, on my master's degree. And, you know, it was an incredible time in my life where, I just really got to absorb and immerse myself completely into design and research, all about architecture.
Yeah. And so, you have a people first design philosophy, which is a very specific type of architect where you have to have incredible listening skills, almost like being a therapist or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have amazing,
Yeah.
that way, right? So, what do you think? Is there something from, your early life that, helped you become a good listener like this?
So when I was in college, I would just, on my free time, like on the weekends, I would go to downtown Savannah and I would just walk around. And in Savannah you have all these squares, these sort of green parks kind of sprinkled throughout the grid of Savannah. And I would just kind of walk around, and every so often I would stop and I would just sort of watch people. And it just became kind of a thing. I still do it today. My wife thinks it's super annoying, but I just sort of watch people interact with their surroundings, and having an interest in that early on helped in design, but it also helps you to sort of listen, not necessarily to what people are saying, but kind of what the real genesis behind whatever the needs are. So like when I interview clients, I ask questions in a way that gets them not to talk about functional things, but to talk about more esoteric things, like not what a kitchen should look like, but how is it used? Not about, the number of bedrooms and bathrooms that are needed for a certain suite of apartments, but who is going to live there? Not necessarily what your business is for a particular space, but who's your client? Like, who's coming there? Who's going to be using that space? Yeah. And then, I try to create and craft designs around that conversation.
Yeah, it seems like, so many creative design professional consultants have this ability to kind of level up, reframe a question.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's when you get, it's when you get past just the pure function of a thing. When you really have a desire to understand who and how, who the person is that is going to be using a space and how they're going to use that space. Once you understand that, then you can create the experience for that person. And that's something that's always really, really interested me personally.
Right. Yeah. It's true. Before you get into the form over function or function over form, you need to actually say, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this? It's a question I try to ask myself like multiple times every day, right?
Yep.
Why am I doing this? What is the purpose of doing this?
Mm-hmm. Just and who is it for?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So you have this mindset, which is challenge accepted. So, right. Is that something that you've always, is that always been your attitude throughout your life, or is that something that has come through your practice?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. My least favorite expression has always been, well, that's just the way we've always done it.
Uh-huh.
I absolutely hate that mindset, because it's limiting, but it's limiting in a way that limits you before you even start. And so, I approach obstacles not as obstacles, but as a challenge, as a as a design challenge. So, whether that's a client's budget, whether it's the limitations or constraints of a site, whether that's limitations or constraints on geography, or climate, or just whatever it is.
Yeah.
Rather than seeing that as a barrier, see it as an opportunity. And I think when you have limitations in design, if you look at it from the right perspective, it can also be very freeing.
Sure.
And I think a lot of architects, if they adopt that sort of mindset, they'll see that there's an incredible opportunity within limitation to design around something rather than trying to design through it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people are really thriving on those kind of limitations. And, I've been seeing a lot of folks talking about new ways of sort of being able to visualize design restraints in terms of zoning and other things, like in different kinds of like AI restraints or whatever, that actually, like, the AI is able to generate things based around all the constraint parameters. So that
well, and even if you think back to, I'm not sure which version of the exams you took, but when I was taking the exams, one of the graphic portions was basically an exercise in reduction based on site limitations. And so, like, visually kind of understanding, okay, I can't build here, I can't build here, those limitations almost created the form just of whatever it is by default. But then within that, you can create some very interesting experiences. Now, obviously, the whole point of the ARE was not to design, but I think that thought process is still very helpful, where if you kind of get all of those limitations out of the way, whether it's setbacks or utility easements or building height or whatever, you're sort of left with this, amorphous blob within which that you can create space.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, then, I mean, once you have that, then, I mean, the sky is the limit. You can do whatever you want within those constraints. You don't have to be constrained by them. You can think creatively within a box.
Yep. So anyway, before you founded Rogue, you worked, I imagine, a number of other larger, medium-sized firms, and you even did some work in aviation projects.
Yeah. So the very first firm that I worked for was the oldest firm in the state of Florida, KBJ Architects. They started back in the 1940s as Kemp, Bunch, and Jackson, the three original partners that founded the firm. They've obviously long since passed away. But I worked at KBJ for a little over a year. Moved to the DC metro area for about a year, and then actually moved back and went back to KBJ, and I was there for about two and a half years. And the one main project that I worked on while I was there, as well as some others, was the Orlando International Airport, the South Terminal expansion. A lot of politics were involved in that project. After I left the firm, it ended up changing hands. It went to another architect, and I think even today they still haven't built the damn thing. But while I was there, I was working under my mentor, Walter Taylor. Also has since passed away, but I got to work directly under him on that project specifically, and it taught me an incredible amount about the difference between macro and micro design. So you have to understand a project that size, it was over 1 million square feet between airside and landside. For those people not familiar, landside is before you cross security, airside is where the planes are. And, you know, so when you're designing a structure that large, you have to be very aware of the macro and the micro. So at a large scale, you've just got the full form, but then what is the human experience like when you're in that building? Because it can, you know, that kind of space can be incredibly overwhelming, and being able to sort of bring it down to a level that can be understood comfortably and experienced comfortably at the individual level is incredibly difficult. But I learned a lot working on that project and working under Walter during that time. But then from there, I kind of did the one thing that everybody tells you you're not supposed to do. In the first 5 years of my career, I worked at 5 different firms. And they all did something very different. And I did that intentionally because I did want to gain experience early rather than taking that sort of tried and true career path of you just work for somebody for 20 years and eventually they just make you a partner. That never held any kind of interest for me.
Well, if you're going to start your own firm as you did, I mean, it seems like that's probably the best thing you can do. You probably picked up something along the way everywhere, right? And also learned what you wanted to avoid. The stagnant, the culture, that kind of stagnancy you're talking about not really constantly refreshing the way you think and the way you work and reapproaching everything. You know, people have different opinions about Elon Musk, but one thing I really like that he always says is that he just assumes that he's wrong about every problem. And and he says, well, how wrong am I? Let's just assume that the entire way I'm approaching this is completely wrong. How wrong is it?
Right. And what can be done differently?
And exactly. And so even if it's working for you, like I have things that are totally successful, they're okay, they have good profit margins, whatever, but I still try to do that exercise all the time because you know, you wake up and it's August 27th, 2025 and everything's different, you know. So the world is changing every day massively.
No, absolutely. And you know, I don't think it was ever anything conscious on my part that one day I would start my own firm. You know, I assumed that eventually I would sort of settle down somewhere and, you know, work my way through the ranks and, you know, become a valuable you know, partner or at least senior member of a team. Before moving to Arkansas, the last firm that I worked at, I was there for a little over 5 years. And, you know, my old boss at that firm, Dean Scott, he's still a good friend of mine. You know, we still keep in touch. You know, I think the one thing that I've always been proud of is I have tried to never burn a bridge. You know, I never wanted to leave anywhere on bad terms. I never wanted to, you know, leave anybody at lurch. You know, I always took care of my projects and, you know, made sure that as much as I could that I was leaving a firm on good terms and try to maintain those relationships moving forward. And I think, you know, that's important for architects to understand, especially architects that are sort of coming up through the profession that are younger. This, I don't care where you live, this is a very small community of people. We all know each other. We all talk to each other. You know, maybe sometimes we're in competition with each other for clients and projects, but at the end of the day, the architecture community is, or at least in my mind, should be pretty tight knit. And you know, you don't want to burn any of those bridges. You don't want to have former employers upset with you, because that's where your next project might come from.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and you never know; it could come back 20 years later. So, so Jeremiah, let's talk a little bit about some of the projects you guys do with Rogue. I want to talk about like 3 examples of projects you guys have done. So
Sure.
we're going to talk about kind of a off-grid passive home. There's also a historic preservation project, a mid-century modern project, and then some affordable multifamily homes that you guys are working on. So you're doing a wide variety of different types of projects with Rogue, right? So let's start with this Lakeview residence. So this was a mid-century modern remodel. Is that right?
Yep.
So so you added a modern addition. So like, what's your approach to that when you're looking at, is this similar to this kind of like mid-century Little Rock kind of aesthetic you were talking about before?
Sort of. There are actually a number of what can be considered mid-century modern neighborhoods. Lakeview is in North Little Rock. And it was a neighborhood built, back in the 50s. It's got its own lake, which was built by the Corps of Engineers, which is technically a reservoir. And this home is sort of that. It's not listed as historic, but it is very much mid-century modern ranch. Very low slope roof, very horizontal. But this project was a challenge because it had a carport, and behind the carport was, call it a living room, but it was at the same elevation as the carport. So you walked up into the house, but then you had to walk down into this sort of sunken living area / sunroom. I think it was actually an old garage that got enclosed, and then they built a fireplace in it. And so the challenge was to convert that space plus an addition into a new master suite. But they wanted it all at the same elevation as the main house. And so they wanted to stay true to that sort of mid-century style and aesthetic, but they also didn't want the addition, because it was going to have taller ceilings. They didn't want it to be like overpowering. They didn't necessarily want it to be very visible from the street. And so the solution, and that addition was also attached to a new deck that was being built on the back of the house. But the whole thing was also up off the ground. So you kind of came in the driveway at street level, but then the terrain immediately, dropped like 8 feet to the backyard. So there were some pretty serious grade changes we had to work with, and structurally trying to figure out how to support this thing. And so there was a lot of kind of technical design elements that we had to explore to try to control budget. Obviously, this is it's a single family house. The clients were younger, kind of average middle class, not incredibly wealthy people. And so we were trying to do a lot with a little.
Yeah.
And so the solution was to essentially just extend out this cube of space, which became the 2 master closets and the new master bath, which was on the back of the house, so that we could have 2 vanities, a tub, and a nice big window so that they could have a view of the wooded backyard. And we were up high enough, we didn't have to worry about privacy or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the roof was a trick, because again, they didn't want it necessarily to be visible from the front. They didn't want it to seem like this huge thing that was kind of stuck onto their house.
Right.
And that sunken living room that we were now turning into the master bedroom had a flat roof. So, it's only 9 feet tall from the slab up. And so the solution was a shed roof that went away from the addition. So it rose up and away, or from that flat roof.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you still got to shed water. So we did end up having to replace the roof over the master suite that was more or less flat, and we gave it a little bit more of a slope to the side, but then we still had this roof coming down to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we designed an interior gutter that was all metal and flashed, and basically sloped straight out to the side. And when it rains, almost creates like a water spigot, so that the water just shoots straight out and away from the house, which we thought was kind of a nice, because we do get a lot of rain in Arkansas, and so that would actually turn into a kind of a cool visual element for the house. Local contractor who's still a really good friend of mine built it for us, did a great job, and ultimately we were able to hit the client's budget within reason. There were some additional costs, but we were able to make that happen for him, and it turned out to be a great project.
Well, to look at the exterior, you'd never even know there was an addition there. It all just looks like it was designed that way from the beginning. But then you see the interior; it's very lush and contemporary, and
very simple, honest expression of material and structure, which is it's kind of a hallmark of our design style. Yeah,
it's great. So can we talk about this project on the Cayman Islands, the Grand Caymans? Is this a proposal or an actual project?
That one I think was just I don't think that one ever went forward. That one was a number of years ago. I'm not even sure I remember.
Have you guys done any kind of off-grid projects like that?
So I've done two. One actually got built, and this project was actually down in Guatemala.
Oh wow!
And so I have a friend here in Little Rock. He's from Guatemala. His family still lives there, and they're coffee farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And he has his own coffee brand here in Little Rock. And their entire business ethos is to sort of employ local native peoples, teach them how to farm sustainably, how to manage their finances. It's all it's sort of a this whole betterment of life ethos that they have. And there was a young woman in the local village who, she has two children are almost grown now. This was almost 10 years ago we did this. But she had two small children at the time. Her husband / partner, the father of her children, had just abandoned her and left. And she had, because of the way the culture is in Guatemala, she had no real way to work or earn a living or take care of her family. She had no assets. She had no real property. But she did have this little small piece of land that is sort of like up a hill in the village. And Giovanni, in his trips back home, he had gotten to know her, and came back to the States and kind of pitched it to the small group that we were a part of at church at the time, and had a real strong desire to build her a house.
Mm-hmm.
And so I volunteered to design it. It had to be designed in a way that all the materials could be carried up the hill by people. Like, it was like a dirt path that was about 12 inches wide.
Wow.
And it just sort of snaked, snaked up the hill,
Yeah.
like a switchback. And so we designed that house to be completely off grid. It had a small area so that she could plant a garden. It had 2 bedrooms, so she had her own bedroom. The two small children had their own bedroom. It had a small space for a kitchen. It's very vernacular South American architecture, so it's a compacted dirt floor. But it's compacted in such a way that she can sweep it, she can clean it.
Yeah.
It has the kitchen utilizes a wood burning stove with a chimney, where a lot of kitchens down there they still have open flame cooking.
Yep.
But hers we designed to have a chimney so that the smoke would carry up and out the house. And then it has an outhouse that's separate from the main house, and our church actually sent a team down to Guatemala with tools, and they got all the materials locally, and they built it for her. They built it in about 4 days. 4 days, 4 nights.
Were you able to?
I wasn't able to go for 2 reasons. One, I was actually taking my exams at the time. And so this was 2014. So it was more than 10 years ago. Crap.
Have you had a chance to go there?
I haven't yet, but my friend Giovanni, he goes back home like 2 or 3 times a year. And she still lives there. Like her kids are teenagers now, so they're like 15, 16 years old. But yeah, she still lives there, and the house still functions properly. It has rainwater collection. Like I said, there's a small garden plot. She has like a small storage closet for like tools and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was an amazing experience, not just personally, but professionally, to go through the exercise of designing something like that.
Yeah.
To be built, very low tech.
Yeah.
And built very quickly. And so, all of the joinery had to be thought about, but also, again, getting back to the human experience of the space, thinking about, how is this small family really going to function in this home? Because it could not be very large. I think in terms of square footage, it's only like 400 or 500 square feet.
Right. So how do you think your design was your design really any different from like what a typical home would be like? Oh
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So
how was it different from like what like a typical dwelling would be like there of the same
size? We did use commonly available materials. So it was all dimensional lumber and corrugated metal siding for the walls and the roof. Most of the vernacular homes built in that area they're glorified sheds. So it's 4 walls and just panels laying flat on top.
Right.
Well, if you know anything about South America, especially Guatemala, they have a monsoon season.
Yeah.
So there are times of the year where they get a lot of rain, and for extended periods of time. And so that's where the idea for the water reclamation came in, where she has several very large barrels that collect the rainwater, but then any runoff, it just runs off.
Yeah.
It's no longer collected. But then it gives her fresh rainwater to use for the garden or for washing up, or even for cooking, whatever she needs. But we designed it to have a slope roof with very wide overhangs, so that during those monsoon seasons, she still has kind of a safe, covered outdoor space to be. She's not just sort of stuck inside. She can still be outside and be protected and even experience the the rains and the outdoors without getting soaking wet.
Yeah. Well, so are you guys looking into doing more kind of off-grid projects like that? Is that a goal of yours with Rogue?
Not really.
Mhm.
If the opportunity presents itself, it's
Yeah.
something we're equipped, to do in terms of understanding, being able to understand, the microclimate of an area and design to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
But no, it's not something that we sort of actively market or seek out. It's,
Yeah.
like I said, if the opportunity presents itself, we would consider it. But
Yeah.
but other than that, no.
Seems like you guys, it's more about you guys have a very kind of egalitarian approach to architecture. And it seems like you're really trying to offer, good architecture and beauty for all, and not just for the elites.
Yes. Yeah. And not,
I feel like to me, I feel like what happened during the whole period of modernism is that somehow beauty became associated with the elites, and
Yeah.
then it was almost like a kind of Maoism that took place in Western society as well, where the beauty used to be one of the principles that every architect had to uphold, and then it became almost like a dirty word for people here in the 20th century. And I really hope that it's kind of coming back in terms of everyone is entitled to have beautiful spaces.
Yeah.
Well,
and one along with that, something that I spend a lot of time trying to educate our potential clients on is, the services of an architect and, if necessary, engineers. It's not cheap, but you can't. The danger is to think of architecture as a commodity, or even more dangerously, as a luxury. It's not a luxury; it is a necessity. Good design and the resulting construction that comes from that has benefits that far outweigh the initial expense, or the initial investment, is what I prefer to call it. And I hate the old adage, but I mean, it's true. You get what you pay for, and you don't get what you don't pay for. And while the average person with enough time and determination can learn to design something, let's call it a house that's functional and that meets their needs and is even beautiful, there are already people like you and I that specialize and have specialized in that for sometimes decades, and can do it much faster and much better, because again, it's about that conversation with a client to find out not the what, but the how and the who. And that's where the real value of design comes in. And that I mean, let's be honest, minimal investment that you make at the beginning of a project is going to more than pay for itself at the completion of that project, whether it's a home addition, whether it's a new single family home, whether it's a condo, whether it's an office building, dentist office, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I think it's something like 90% of the structures in America have no architect involved.
Which is why apartments across this country all look exactly the same, because they're all using the same designs from the 1980s.
Sure.
Like we haven't.
Okay, well, let's talk about how you're applying some of these principles to multifamily and affordable housing. I feel like there's a lot of potential for all kinds of new typologies in these areas.
Yeah.
Right. So tell me about some of your multifamily projects.
Yeah, so we've got a number of them going on right now. And really, when affordable housing, as a term, it gets kind of a bad rap, and I wish it didn't, because we have to think in terms of the necessity of housing. It's really a right of all people to be housed, and that's kind of where we start. And so when we think about affordable housing specifically, we're thinking about durable, dignified housing. We're not trying to build, the cheapest thing out there just to get it done and get people in it. We're thinking about, again, the experience of people in those homes. Are they going to last? Is this investment that the developer and or the housing authority is making, is this going to be something that's still going to be there in 10 years, or is it just going to get torn down and something new built? So we want to start from that durability conversation, but then it's the dignity of it as well. So, you can't start from a position of, well, we just need to cram as many people into this project as we can to make the numbers work. The housing has to be dignified. So it has to provide the basics, at least 2 bedrooms, preferably 1 or 2 bathrooms, a kitchen that is functional. I mean, my gosh, and some of the apartments that I've been in and even lived in, if there's more than one person in the kitchen, it's too many. And just because it doesn't work, it's not functional. And when families live in affordable housing, and so maybe it is a mother and her trying to teach her kids how to cook, or a husband and a wife that like to cook together, or maybe they have a grandparent that stays with them, and so those spaces need to be thought about in better ways, more functional ways, more dignified ways, and that's something that we try to do.
And so, have you guys done some affordable? I'm not seeing it on your site. Have you done any multifamily projects, or?
We have. So our
are these new? Is this a new build? Is it a new build, or is it?
Most of the multifamily projects that we have going on right now, they're all new construction. We have done several that are historic preservation. So the biggest one that we did was in Lawrence, Massachusetts. It's called Pac 10 Lofts. And that was a conversion of an old textile mill. So it's all unreinforced brick masonry and heavy timber construction. The building is 7 stories tall and 500,000 square feet. So it takes up the entire length of a city block, and half the width of the city block.
Wow.
Very large project. So we did phase 1 of that project. So that was a total of 197 units. And those units range from 1 bedroom to 3 bedroom. The 1 bedrooms are lofts. So you sort of come in, you've got the bathroom, then kitchen, and then living and dining. Very efficient in terms of space allocation. Still functional, but very efficient, very, very, very small. But that was a great project, and since the day that they opened phase 1, there's currently even still a waiting list for those apartments. They've been completely full for the last 3 years.
Oh, that's great.
So we're actually getting ready to launch a new website, which is going to have a lot more of our work. So actually this picture, my background is a modern, it's not affordable housing, but they're modern townhomes that we designed here in Little Rock.
Okay.
Phase 1 of that project is built, which is 2 of the 4 buildings. And they are 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath, with a roof deck. So they're 2-story with a roof deck, and these turned out really, really nice. Again, very space efficient, but functional, kind of thinking about the types of people that will live in these units. They're going to be younger, smaller families, or younger couples that are, they're going to be able to entertain. They're going to be able to, just enjoy the space with others, not, not those typical sort of very closed off galley kitchens that you see in a lot of older developments.
So when you're working with, have you done any conversions of existing buildings where you're either going from industrial to residential, or
Yep,
or retail or something like that? Have you been doing projects?
Quite a bit of adaptive reuse. The Pac-10 Lofts, like I said, that was an old textile mill, so that was an adaptive reuse. We did. We're actually hoping this project is going to come back to life soon. It's the New Haven Clock Factory in New Haven, Connecticut. It's about 150,000 square feet. Again, unreinforced masonry, heavy timber construction.
Hey, Ryan, let me interrupt you. That would be an amazing project for us to collaborate on. I'd love to work with you on that.
Okay. Well, yeah, we can definitely talk about that offline. But it's so that's an affordable housing project. The local housing authority, Elm City Communities, is currently in the process of taking ownership of the building. It's currently designed for 130 affordable artists' lofts. But the building has a very, very interesting and eclectic history. We don't have nearly enough time for me to talk about it on this interview, but that project is really a passion project for us, and almost a once in a career kind of project to bring a building like this. And so it's actually a series of buildings that was built between the 1860s and the 1940s. All of the buildings are historic in their own rights, but it's really going to be an incredible, I think, impetus for new development in that area of New Haven.
Wow, it's really exciting. Yeah,
it's really gonna help, elevate the city and bring it back.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we do a lot of projects there. We just did the Amtrak station.
Okay. Station. Yeah.
In New Haven. I just as we're discussing existing buildings, I'll just interrupt to say this episode is brought to you by Scandaplan. For architects like Jeremiah Russell at Rogue Architecture, where affordable housing, preservation, and community projects are central, good data is the difference between momentum and deadlines. Scandaplan delivers admin-ready certainty backed by industry-leading level of detail, level of accuracy, QA, and 3-stage quality check that guarantees clash-free, approval-ready models. From ADA compliance to shell verification to mapping neighborhood context, their scan reduces risk while supporting adaptive reuse that conserves embodied energy and preserves cultural heritage. And with a price match guarantee, you don't trade rigor for value. Scandaplan, the measure of excellence. Focus on design. Certainty lies in good data. Now back to the conversation with Jeremiah. We're running out of time. I want to just do a little bit of a bullet round with you here. Talk a little bit about a lot of this multi-state licensure and zoning and board service and stuff that you're doing. That seems like a big part of your life. You're working across 14 states. So are you seeing regional expectations shaping your how you're adopting or rejecting any of the tools that you use, any of the ways that you guys work?
Yeah, so I mean, really from day one, I built my practice on a mobile model. So I, intentionally never wanted to be sort of tied to a desk or an office or even a particular location. So, from, the very earliest days, I've had, a Dropbox account. All of our work is stored in the cloud. I'm currently sitting in my conference room, but on my laptop, but I could just as easily be at a coffee shop or in an airport lounge or, sitting on a park bench somewhere. It really doesn't matter. As long as I have an internet connection, I can work anywhere. And so, I kind of stumbled into this sort of multi-state practice. The first state I got licensed in was Florida, just because that's where I started taking my exams. And then, immediately got reciprocity in Arkansas, and then got licensed in Arkansas in 2014. I mean, I think it was only a few months after getting my initial license in April of 2004. But the other states kind of came as opportunities came. Though some states I selected because, I have an interest in those states specifically doing projects. So for example, Colorado, they have a huge need for affordable housing. So I'm trying to find ways to actively market in that area. I already talked about the New Haven project. So that's where Connecticut came from. Massachusetts, the Pac-10 Lofts. We did some design work for an adaptive reuse of a hotel in Edenton, North Carolina. Small town on the inner banks of North Carolina. And also did some work in California, some work in Oregon. So again, these opportunities just sort of presented themselves. Did a lot of work in Texas for a contractor who was doing some smaller residential work, but needed an architect, somebody that could really help him and his clients visualize the work.
So how much work is it when you start working in all these different states to kind of understand like the planning and expectations and zoning and all these different things?
So that, it's not as hard as you think. Mostly it's having conversations with the right people. So, call the planning department, call the permit office, speak to whoever's on duty and just ask questions.
And you're also kind of a board member yourself on local, so you understand this well from the other side, right? So
So public service is important to me. I think as architects, the tools that we have at our disposal lend themselves to those types of, whether it's the planning commission or, board of adjustment or, any of those sort of zoning and planning boards. Architects are uniquely suited to serve, and I think we should. But yeah, I currently serve on the planning commission. I think in Little Rock, I think I've served on a total of 7 commissions, in one capacity or another. But yeah, if you're going to work in other municipalities, just having those conversations, just call the planning department and just ask questions. Don't try to figure it out yourself.
Yeah. So what kind of personal guardrails do you have across all your projects that you just will not compromise on because you just know better than to do that, no matter how difficult it gets?
Preserving my nights and weekends is pretty important to me. I was not always very good at that, especially when first starting my firm. I'm sure anyone will tell you, no is a dirty word. You always want to be available. You want to take care of your clients. You want to go above and beyond, blah, blah, blah. But you very quickly realize that leads to burnout. It leads to resentment. It leads to stress. It leads to your kids forgetting who you are.
I like to think
And
that all my business goals are just an expansion of my own behavioral goals, because
That's
really
right.
it's about myself as a person and my own behavior.
Yep.
What is my behavior and how is that achieving my
Yep.
goals, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And yeah, nobody should ever feel bad about setting very clear boundaries, whatever those boundaries are. You know, it's going to vary by person, but you know, me, I try to, you know, when the day is over, I try to, you know, if something comes up, unless it's a legitimate emergency, it can wait until tomorrow morning, or it can wait until Monday morning. You know, the world is not going to end because I don't pick up my phone or answer an email right away.
that's why I love working with architects. You guys are all so level-headed. Uh,
Well, that's either
I have to
that's
say
either a
I've had a
personality
million.
flaw or it's chemically induced.
I've had to say I've had a million types of clients in my career, and architects are just always the best for that reason, because you're just like, you know, hey, rational people, thoughtful, and seem like don't want to have a lot of drama in your life.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah.
So anyway, so just wrapping up. So, I mean, you know, you're really developing a lot of stuff at a young age. So, I mean, thinking about, you know, the legacy you've got, when you think about your legacy in architect, do you imagine having, like, you know, a signature house that you made, or would it be more about, you know, the housing frameworks and more of this kind of work that you're doing on a more of a municipal level?
So I've often said this, and I'll continue to say this. I don't ever want someone to look at a building that I designed and know that I designed it.
Yeah.
I really want it to be much more about the experience, the enjoyment of the projects that I design. And I want people to question, you know, to walk into a building and enjoy the experience there, and then to ask, boy, I wonder who designed this building, and then maybe go and find out. But I think that's what I would like my legacy to be, is to be a legacy of experience, of personal enjoyment of the buildings that I design. Even if I'm never recognized for it, I don't think that matters as much.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's sort of that kind of quiet restraint that you started talking about at the beginning of the show. Really, I mean, I used to do it myself. My dad calls it being a Toulouse-Lautrec. But that's having that quiet eye is really a kind of a unique skill set, actually, and it's great that you're using that gift.
Yep, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's going to be a wrap with Jeremiah today. Today we saw how Jeremiah is bringing Prince people first, challenge ready lens to rogue architecture. You can learn more about his work at roguearch.com, ROUGEARCH.com. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Great to see you. Hope to continue this conversation soon, and I'd love to talk to you about, you know, all these projects you're doing all over the country.
Yeah, absolutely, Owen. I appreciate you inviting us onto the show. This has been a lot of fun. It's really exciting to do this.
Really enjoyed talking to you today.
All
okay,
right.
well,
Take care.
Thanks, and join us again at Practice Forward, and visit our sponsor, Scan to Plan. It's SCAN2PLAN.io. See you again on Practice Forward.